Good morning, everybody.
Every promise we can make, every prayer and step of faith, every difference we will make is only by God's grace. Every mountain we will climb, every ray of hope we shine, every blessing left behind is only by God's grace. Grace alone which God supplies, strength alone God will provide. Christ in us, our cornerstone, we will go forth in grace alone. Every soul we long to reach, every heart we hope to reach, everywhere we share this peace is only by God's grace. Every lovely word we say, every tear we wipe away, every sorrow turned to praise is only by God's grace. Grace alone which God supplies, strength unknown God will provide. Christ in us, our cornerstone, we will go forth in grace alone. We will go forth in grace alone. We wait for your coming. We wait for new life. We wait in our despairing. We wait through the strife. But how long? How long? How much longer must we wait? How long? How long? How much longer must we wait? Lord, we are forsaken. We yearn to be free. Sam said change is gonna come, but right now we can't breathe. How long? How long? How much longer must we wait? How long? How long? How much longer can we wait?
Whoa, it's so nice when you're all there in the front row. We missed all of you. Thank you guys. You know, we're just missing Christy, but it's really good when the whole band is so great.
Thank you.
So good to
Thank you.
this morning. Well, it is wonderful to be here together. Let's see, a few instructions. Please do know that I'm not sure that we've made this, but as our preparation time for worship, we do have the last 10 minutes before we start the whole service. We have music in here, and you are welcome to come in and sing along because it's just fun. Also, there's little blue cards right in the pew pocket ahead of you, and on that, I always appreciate it if you let me know that you're here. If you have any changes in emails or addresses or any of those kinds of things, that's a good way to put it down there, especially emails. Those seem to change a lot. And lastly, if you flip that page over, there is some room there for you to share your concerns and joys and what have you, and just mark it if you want to have it announced during our prayer time, or if it just is something you want me to know about, just mark it that way as well. And those will be picked up in just a little bit. It is wonderful to be here on this beautiful spring-ish weather. You really had me fooled there for about 2 weeks where I thought, oh, we don't have February here. Yes, we do. Found out. So welcome to February. But it's the last Sunday. So March will either come in like lamb or a lion. So we'll see. All right. Now in Montana, that really doesn't matter because it will go out like a lion no matter what. All right. So as we worship together today, let us just stand as we are able for our greeting word. God is here.
To love, to forgive, to encourage.
We are here.
To pray and praise and grow.
Awaken us to connection.
God's Spirit in this place.
May the peace of Christ be with you.
And also with you.
Would you please greet one another in Christ's peace? Good morning, Dorothy. Good to see you. Do you want me to have your cards? Okay. Just one. Excellent. That's all right. Good morning, Jim.
I have a cold, so.
Oh, good. I don't need another one. Good morning. Good to see you. Good morning. Good morning. Hello, hello. We need a date for coffee sometime, but you don't have to drink coffee. Okay, I promise. Good morning. How are you?
Tana, this is Pastor Nancy.
Tana?
Tana.
So nice to meet you.
Check her out.
Who's the...
This is Nancy.
Hi.
Say hi. This is Nancy.
Hi.
Call her Pastor Nancy.
We do, because it's hard to say my last name. She's very silly, actually. Okay, and I didn't get your name.
Brendan.
Brendan?
Brendan.
Brendan. I can do that. Really nice to have you guys here today.
All in.
All N's. That's easy. It's really good when you give me a visual. You know. Yeah.
We're not used to this cold. Huh?
You are of my tribe. Hey, you too.
Christ beside me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, King of my heart. Christ within me, Christ below me, Christ above me, never to part.
may be seated. This morning, as we sort of settle down into our time of worship, I think I probably started this because I need this moment, but I hope that you do too. We just have been busy all week, and in this moment, it's good to just come in and settle, to be present in this place, to be present to one another, and to be present to our God. So I just invite you at the sound of the singing bowl to just be in silence, to allow yourself to sense the presence of God in this place together. Amen. Well, this is week 2 in Lent. It's also week 2 in our new sermon series. And after giving it some thought for a while, I came up with the title of the whole series, which is, What Did I Sign Up For? We're looking for the next few weeks at the things that are in our book of worship in the front of our hymnal that talk about those moments when we join together as members, as people of this particular congregation, and what it is that we promise each other when we decide that we're part of this congregation, part of this church family. And in the book of discipline, we changed it, actually, in case you wondered why there's one word missing in our hymnal. The hymnal came out in 1989, and they changed and added one more word to our promises in 1992. So just so you'll know, in case that's a random United Methodist trivia. Okay. We could take an actual Sunday and all of us sit there and write in witness. Maybe we'll do that at the end. Okay, on that Sunday. Anyway, so the first one is last week's theme. Prayers. Good. I can tell you were all awake. That was good. Okay, prayers. And today is presence, gifts, service, and witness. I promise you by Palm Sunday you'll have that down flat. And if you don't, I will come visit you at your house. No. Actually, no, that's probably not a good bribe. Okay. The sermon will get longer, Doug. That would work. That would work. So that's what we're doing. And for the sermon in a nutshell today, I have invited Patty Llewellyn to come and share with us one of her hobbies, because it just seemed like this particular metaphor probably works better for this particular week than just about anything. So I'm going to ask Patty to come and share with us.
Good morning. So one of my things to do, besides many, many others, is to weave. And when Nancy asked me to see how I could work my weaving into a sermon in a nutshell for today, it really made me do a lot of thinking, and I appreciate the fact to be able to have done that. And so this is my one of my looms, and it's a small table loom, and it's been sitting empty for quite a while now. And as I was thinking about it, I realized as this sits empty, it has no purpose whatsoever. It just takes up space. And our church building is very similar. It is just a building. But when we add members, it becomes something with a purpose. With a loom, you have to have yarn, just like we have to have members. And to start out, I have to warp my loom with yarn, and it has to go through the heddles, and it has to go through various things that set up the structure for what I'm going to be weaving. And in the church, we need to have people step up into places of leadership to help work out what our mission and vision is and kind of give us a structure upon which we as a church want to work and do the work that God has set out for us. But guess what? If I put the warp on the loom and if I then cut it off, assuming I've got something to work with, all I have is a bunch of strings that fall loose. So one of the very important things is to add the weft, which is the yarn that goes and interlocks with the warp. And so as churches, we as members need to be that interlocking piece. We need to work together with those who are in leadership in our church, and together we share all of our gifts. The various colors and textures of the yarn add the beauty to the product that I am working on here. And just like that, all the members of the church with their various gifts and talents working within the structure that we are setting up here create something beautiful that we can do and have for our church to be of benefit to not only ourselves, but to our community and to our God. So as we are working on this, I was thinking that, okay, occasionally I have to make samples, because what I think of in my head and what I put on paper does not necessarily turn out when it's on the loom. And so sampling is encouraged. I balk at it, but I try to do it. And that is one of the things when we do our various ministries. We can start out with a ministry and we can say, this sounds like a really good idea. And then when we put it into play, we realize, hey, that was a good idea. But occasionally you say, this really isn't working. So we should be able to be willing to be flexible, to try something out. If it's not working, change it. Somebody else may have an idea that will improve it, or we might want to put that ministry on the back burner for a future time, or not at all, and look to something different. So that's one of the things that I was thinking about here. And then the other thing is that occasionally when I'm weaving, a warp thread breaks, or I might run out of the color that I was working with because I didn't plan as well as I should have. And so I can repair the warp threads. I can cut the one out and I can replace it. I can add a new color, and it might add something extra that I wasn't really even thinking about and make the piece even more beautiful. And in the church, we have leaders and we have workers that are in different positions, but sadly, some of them pass away and others move, or others just have some burnout and they need to take a break. So we as church members need to be those repairs, just like I have to do in my loom. You need to maybe step out of your shell, which I am doing now, and step up and take over some of these jobs or participate so that the work of the church can go on. And then the final thing is that hopefully when I am done with this, I will have a beautiful product, and I love to share. It gives me joy to share what I've made with other people as gifts for friends and family. And we as a church, if we work together and weave our gifts and talents together, can create something beautiful for ourselves, for our community, and for our God.
Amen. Thank you. You can just leave it up there for now, Peg. Yeah, just leave it up. Awesome. would you, if you have prayer concerns that you'd like to share, hi, Tim. Would you please pass those toward the center aisle for Rob to pick up for us, and then let us sing together.
Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel His mighty power and His grace. I can hear the rush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel His mighty power and His grace. I can hear the brush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place.
This morning, among our other prayers, we want to keep Mary in prayer. It's good to have her back with us today, but she's experiencing many of the things that happen when you have a major surgery, so we want to keep her in our prayers. Also for Reba, for Ann Randall, for Becky, who is dealing with a brain tumor and still needs our prayers, and for the people of Florida who need our support. Also for Krista, as she adjusts to having another baby, her son Alexander, and for a brother-in-law named Russell. Also, I've been given permission to share this. Nita is going to be having some surgery here coming up pretty soon. And she doesn't think she's going to need much time off, but I keep trying to talk her into more. But Nita, just know that you are in our prayers and that we are here for you, whatever you need. Are there other concerns or joys we'd like to share today? Absolutely, for Kathy May as she adjusts to living life without her best friend and her companion of life. So we do keep her in our prayers as well. Other concerns or joys we want to share today? There was somebody else that popped in my head earlier. Maybe I'll think of it in a minute. One of my dearest friends, her congregation has been looking for a new pastor for 2 years. This is where we say, thank you, God, for being a Methodist. But it's been a 2-year-long process. She's been part of that process. And this morning, their hopefully new pastor is preaching, and then they will be voting on whether or not to call her. So I just hope that you will lift them up. They are in Missoula, Montana. It's the United Church of Christ in Missoula. Other concerns or joys?
Thanksgiving that my brother was good.
Yes, we have heard from Mike's brother Colin, and he's doing very much better, and he's at home. So, anybody else? Okay. This has been another week where there's just lots of stuff going on in the world. I love how in our study with Brene Brown, that one of my favorite things she says is that we live in a time and in a place where when we wake up in the morning, we turn on the news or we turn on the computer so that we can know, number one, what should we be afraid of today? And number two, who is to blame? And that's so true. That's so true. And I have to sort of almost stop myself in the morning with Facebook or with the news and think, no, I don't want to start my day with that. But as we think about the world and all of the things that just are overwhelming, the situation in Syria right now where the bombing has been so terrible, and of course it's hard because they're so far away. Sometimes it's hard to remember that these are mothers and fathers and children and grandparents and people who want to keep their kids safe just like we do. and the people who, the students who are getting together and saying, do we have any power? Do we have any voice? So we want to just make sure that as we pray, that we hold each other. The people that are sitting next to us and the people that if we sat next to them, we would just realize, even if they live clear across the planet, that we'd realize that their heart beats just like ours does. They love, they get sad, they're happy. All of the people in the world who God loves. Let's just hold one another. Let's hold one another. Let us pray together. Loving God, as we come to you in prayer this day, I am reminded that the more I dig in to understand what it means to pray, the more I realize how much of a beginner I am. I have to remember every second of every day that prayer isn't about getting what I think I need or want. It's not a transactional relationship, but it is, oh God, a relationship of trust, of growing together, and of community. And so we bring all of these things, oh God, that are on our heart this day, the people we know who are hurting. The woman who left a note in my prayer box this week that said she is a meth addict, and she's in treatment for 6 months, and she doesn't know if she's going to make it. For the men up in the prison who are looking for new ways to figure out what it means to be on the outside. For the men, the women, and the children whose safety is in question every single day. Who have been in emergency mode so long that they don't know what a deep breath even feels like. For those helpers, oh God, who run toward rather than run away. For our first responders, for those in the military that are constantly looking to keep those around them safe. For our police force, for our Peace Corps workers, for our physicians and nurses. For all of those, oh God, who when they think about what they need to do today, they say, oh God, how can I help? You call us, oh God, to be part of this great weaving of creation. And there are times as if we feel like our little piece of yarn or string, whether it's warp or woof, matters little. And yet, oh God, you call each and every one of us precious and beloved and important. And so we come here in humility, knowing that even in our helplessness, sometimes our hopelessness and despair, that you are the one who calls us into relationship, and that each of us has a gift, a power, an ability that is needed. We pray for all of those that we've mentioned today, but we also pray for those who are so deeply entwined with our hearts that trying to even say them aloud is just too hard. For those things that we would pray about if we knew how to pray the words. So we lean into our time of prayer together, knowing, oh God, that even when we don't know the words or we don't know how to express ourselves and our need and our desires and our hopes, that your Spirit is with us and prays with us in sighs too deep for our words and intercedes, so that all of our prayers, oh God, are not only heard, but the energy of them, the love of them, the power of them spreads out into the earth as one great weaving of peace and beauty and love. We pray all of this, O God of love, in the power and in the name of our Christ, who invited us to pray. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Peace of our praying, song of our singing, truth of our telling, love of all loves, health of our healing, gift of our giving, life of our living, light of all lives. Peace of our praying, Christ of our crying, strength of our striving, heart of our heart, bread of our breaking, wine of our waiting, blood of our boasting, death of all death. Peace of our praying, faith of forgiving, way of our walking, King of all kings, breath of our breathing, courage of carrying, hope of our hoping, life of all life.
Morning.
Good morning.
Reading this morning is from John.
Chapter 14, verses 8 through 21. Philip said to him,
Lord, show us the Father, and we will be satisfied. Jesus said to him, Have I been with you?
"You all this time, Philip, and you still do not know me?
Whoever has seen me has
Seen the Father.
How can you say, Show us
The Father, do you not believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? The words that I say, I do not speak on my own, but the Father who dwells in me does his works. Believe me that I am in the Father and the Father is in me. But if you do not, then believe me because of the works themselves. Very truly I tell you, the one who believes in me will also do the works that I do, and in fact will do greater works than these. Because
I am going to the Father,
I will do whatever you ask in my name.
so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. That is driving me nuts. I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If in my name you ask me for something, for anything, I will do it. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. And I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to be with you forever. This is the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive. That's also what I have. Whom the world cannot receive, but it neither sees him nor knows him. You know him because he abides with you, and he will be in you. I will not leave you orphan. I am coming to you. In a little while the world will no longer see me, but you will see me because I live. You also will live. On the day you will know that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you. They who have my commandments and keep them, and those who love me, and those If another member of the church sins against you, go and point out the fault when the two of you are alone. If the member listens to you, you have regained that one. But if you are not listened to, take one or two others along with you, so that every word may be confirmed by the evidence of two or three witnesses. If the member refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if the offender refuses to listen even to the church, let such a one be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. Truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly I tell you, if two of you agree on earth about anything you have, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where two or three are gathered in my name, I am there among them. The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God. Thank you, Gary. And now may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, the couple of weeks or so before the parsonage was ready, when I first moved here, I stayed with Wallens. And in their guest room, there is a wonderful bookshelf that goes clear up to the ceiling that is completely filled with weaving thread and yarn. And it's gorgeous. It is absolutely the most gorgeous thing ever. I just wanted to take a picture of it and mount it or something because it was just so beautiful, seeing all these different colors all blended together. So when I was starting to think about this week in presents, I thought about that room, and I thought about that yarn, and I thought about the process of weaving. And I'm hoping that I don't have too many sermons in my head once again. The thing about going over these 5 words, prayers, presence, gifts, service, and witness, is that I think I probably needed them more than I thought you needed them. So I hope you're getting something out of this, because I gotta tell you, I sure am. Because when you look in the book of worship, or you look at the hymnal and you go over these vows that we say, and I always love to do it anytime there's a baptism or anyone is coming in to join the church, and sometimes when we just remember who we are. They're words, and they're important words, and I think I know what I'm saying when I say them. But when you take them out and you just kind of shake them out and look at them one at a time, it is amazing to me how much deeper those words go than I often give them credit for. Now, if you are reading the weekly Preacher Women, I gave you a fill in the blank. Presence, when I think of the word presence, the word that comes into my head is, did anybody come up with a word other than the one I had? Okay, well, what I always come up with is showing up. When I think of presence, I think of showing up. And I look back at my experience in the church since I was just really, really young. And I actually started going to church about the time I was about 8. And I was pretty much by myself. I just got, I but I took rides from church ladies and showed up for Sunday school and all of this. And it became very important to me very, very early. So just being present to me was really important, because I knew all of these people and they cared that I was there. Well, a few churches back, they had this wonderful history cupboard right in the fellowship hall. And it was beautiful. Somebody in the church had made it, had glass doors with some mementos of the years in the church. But underneath, there was all of this memorabilia. And I can't remember why I decided that one particular day that it would be good to go through all of that. It wasn't nearly as organized as our history committee has this room back here, in case you're interested, all carefully cataloged as it is. This one was just, I wonder what we should do with this. I know, here's a closed door. You know that kind of place? We have them in our houses too. Except that they all had to do with the history of the church, just memorabilia, this and that. And in the middle of that pile, I was just sitting on the floor pulling all this stuff out, and there were ledgers back from the 1930s, and there were documents that had been how much we paid for lumber in 1942, and all the kind of things that nobody wants to take responsibility for throwing out, that kind of stuff. But clear in the bottom, there's this little box that has Sunday school attendance books. You remember those books? The little books, and you very carefully put everybody's name in, and then you'd keep the attendance. And oftentimes in that day, back in the olden days, if you got perfect attendance at the end of the school year, there would be a special moment in worship where you would recognize those people who had perfect attendance that year. And sometimes there were stars involved. I mean, I always liked it if you got stars. Or there might be a special bookmark with the Lord's Prayer on it or something. But this was kind of a big deal. And in that box that I found in this church, in the bottom of the cabinet, were these handwritten notes. Now, I know that those would have been easy for somebody to throw away, but I was so glad in that moment that they hadn't. Because on those notes, it said, "Dear Mrs. Newton, please excuse Marcia from Sunday school this week. We were out of town, but we attended church where we were visiting." I really loved that note. Could you imagine anybody writing a note to the Sunday school teacher or the pastor saying that they're going to be gone? I think we could start something again. Don't you think that would just be awesome? Especially hunting season? What's that? It'd work like a charm. Yeah. So anyway, and what was really, really fun about this is that Marcia was somebody that I knew. So I had to call her and say, Marcia, you'll never guess what I just found. I found a note from your mom excusing you from attending Sunday school. And she says, oh, I can't believe that. Because Marcia had stopped going to church in her late teenage years and hadn't come back till about a year before this date. And she came back because I was getting a flu shot, and she was at the clinic, and she was giving flu shots. And one thing kind of led to another. And when she found out I was a pastor, and she said these memorable words that I hear all over town, always as a pastor, "Oh, I used to go to that church." Excuse about her attendance. Now, lots of things were different back then. I mean, we had these larger Sunday school classes. We had lots of adult classes. We had lots of things that were going on in the community. When I was growing up, there was things happening at the church that we thought of, we call them attractional ministry models. You know, we have the pickup basketball league. Remember the basketball league churches had? And then we had the bowling, and anybody from the community could come. It would have the name of the church on the shirt or whatever. There was the basketball and that. Oh, and the volleyball league, where you'd have adults from all over the community who'd come and play volleyball in your building. It was amazing. We just had all of this stuff going on. But to tell you the truth, it really wasn't a golden era like we thought it was. For example, day and age, it would not even have been possible to think that a woman in that particular church could be part of the leadership. In fact, I remember talking when I was a little older to people in that same denomination who said, if the day comes when women are elders, I am out of here. And it was a woman who said it. So it wasn't exactly a golden age. I mean, it wasn't a time when women and men were both out in the world working. Oftentimes the moms were staying home and doing a lot of really, really worthwhile things. But times have changed over a matter of years and years. And so it doesn't look like that anymore. I mean, if I really did start a thing where I would write you little notes and say, you know, I noticed that you're gone Sunday, and I just wanted to know where you were. I'm guessing that wouldn't go over well. Always tempting, though. Some people I know I could get away with it. So things have changed, and we know that. So I don't know what I thought about what being present was in a different time. Because really, I loved going to church. as a kid. And I would do anything I could do to catch a ride and be there. But I think just being there probably is what I meant at that particular moment when I thought about being present. Now these days, since the culture is not just changing, but is continuing to change, I remember a meeting I had with a group of leaders who were talking about, how do we judge who is a regular attender and who is someone who's just kind of occasional? Because we have little things to fill out about that. We have members and people that. And I remember looking at them and saying, do you know, if this had been 40 years ago, none of you would have been regulars. Because regular back then is you are at church unless you have a really, really good excuse. And you wanted to be there. Everybody wanted to be there, or at least we thought we did. And now that isn't true, because we have jobs that take up a lot of our time. We don't all live in the same town anymore, so if you're going to see those grandkids, you got to go see them, or they have to come here. And sometimes it's just complicated getting to church, and sometimes we are just so exhausted by the time Sunday gets here that I really don't blame anybody for sitting there with the New York Times and a cup of coffee in your jammies. Although I'd rather see you. So we know that being present isn't the same now as it was then. So what does it mean if we're going to promise each other not just our prayers but our presence? What does it mean to be present to each other? What does it mean to be present? As I was reflecting on this and going a little bit deeper, I realized that it's a little bit like, how are you present for your kids? When they're little, and in fact, I'll even just name it out there, and when they're about 2 and they're really talking good, and you're trying to be present for your child, but they cannot stop talking. And so even though you really want to hear what they say, after they've told you the same thing for the 53rd time, your mind may wander. And then pretty soon it's, Mom, you're not listening to me. But you know what I mean by that kind of presence? The kind of presence, and I was thinking about this week when I was talking to my best friend, and I talk on the phone pretty much every day. And when we talk, we really try to be present for each other. But I know that both of us have been guilty from time to time to trying to multitask. And the trouble with multitasking when you're on the phone is you really miss stuff, or with your spouse. And I'm not even going to go there because I know I'm guilty of that. I love the conversations we have, though, that says, I know that I told you that. No, you didn't. Oh, no, I remember quite clearly telling you that. How are we present together? I think, one of the things I thought about this week when I was reading the news about the Olympics was that, did you see the picture of the women's speed skaters? And there's 3 speed skaters on the team, and they count the time from when all 3 of them go over the finish line. And the women's team from South Korea, who decided that their teammate was so slow that they just went off without her and just left her behind. I'm not sure they really understood what being present or being a team was all about. One of the hardest lessons for me to learn about Christianity, and I'm learning it all the time, is that, are you ready for this? This is really heretical. Christianity is not about the vertical, I said that right? Yeah, it was vertical. The vertical relationship, just me and God, just me and Jesus. Christianity is a community. Now, maybe it doesn't sound heretical on the surface, but think about it. In this society, we really highly value the power, not majesty, but that's a good one. Anyway, the value of individual life. We have if we had especially in the West, it would be John Wayne, right? The rugged individual who knows his own mind and always goes for what he needs to do. does what's right no matter what. Christianity is not an individualistic religion. Even the hermits that I talked about last week, the ones who went out into the desert so they had more focus in their prayer life, it wasn't very long before those hermits started gradually moving closer together. And then they had certain times and certain places where they prayed together, and eventually they became communities and monastic communities and villages. Because Christianity, to really be Christianity, just can't be done as a solo. I really hate that sometimes. I'll tell you why, is because people are difficult. You know? People are just difficult. And how much, no, that's a whole other conversation, Michael. We'll talk after church. We're difficult. And the more they're together in the same place, the more difficult we are, because we don't always see eye to eye on everything. So if we're going to be present to one another, what does that mean? Now, with my best friend, I try to not be taking the dishes out of the dishwasher when we're talking. Sometimes, though, we do take a break for grinding coffee beans, because that's just as important. But you know, the moments in our life when we realize, how is it that I'm being present to myself, to my community, to God, to this place? If you stood where I stand, where Micah stood as well, and you look around a room of people, it's a little bit like being a teacher in a classroom, because kids in the classroom they think they're invisible. You know how that is? And so they're doing all kinds of little things, even though you're looking right at them, because they think that if they're sitting facing you, that you can't see them. Well, congregations are like this as well. But the interesting thing about being part of a congregation is that when I could, this is being an interesting microphone day. It's just what, so we'll just be patient. When I look out, I know that I could make an assumption about what's going on in your mind. And you might be looking super attentive and actually be doing your grocery shopping. I know this. There's a workshop that I go to once a month, and the guy, when he's talking, all of us have our computers out. Every single person in that room has a computer. So we're all sitting on our computers, and one time during one of our breaks, he said, when I look out there and I see all those computers, I'm assuming that you're answering your emails. But I had to go up to him and say, I have my computer out, and I am using the computer to take notes, because I can be more attentive to you if I'm writing down notes. Some people can be more attentive by closing their eyes. Some people are not being attentive when they're closing their eyes, but you know who you are. Sometimes there is so much going on in this room, in this particular moment, we have absolutely no idea. So when I'm saying that we need to be present and we need to be aware of being present, I'm not talking about, I'm going to find out who's really being present, and there'll be a quiz after church. That's not what I mean by present. But when we come in the door of our house, to dinner with a friend, even on a phone call, or we come in this particular building, are we being present to who and whose we are? When we're present, we might even notice somebody who's just struggling. We might notice someone who just feels awkward because they don't know what to do next. We might notice someone who hasn't been around for a while. We might not know the situation that someone is going through, but if we're present, if we're intentional, and if we're paying attention, it is amazing how much power there can be in this place. One of the things that I think is really important when we're talking about presence is to realize that presence always starts with God. In the scriptures that we read today, God says, I show up first, and then I hope you're going to show up too. Now, I don't expect when we are together in this place or at a meeting or outside this community that we can pay attention at 100% every minute of the time, because really there are 2-year-olds in our lives. And we love our 2-year-olds, but sometimes our 2-year-olds just need to go to the nap. Not that you can say that to your best friend either, by the way. But there are moments when we know that our attention wavers. But presence is about how I show up and what I think I'm doing when I show up. And it isn't necessarily even presence when we're sitting here in this building, although I hope that we're present when we're here. How are we present when we leave this place? Is the fact that we are present to each other here, does that have any impact on how present we are when we leave this room? I think it does. Because I believe that God invites us into the kind of presence that is happening no matter where we are. God is present with us no matter, in every single moment, no matter, this is a quote from Thomas Keating, God is present with us in every single moment no matter what the content of the moment holds. Now imagine if we were able to take this model from God and when we are with each other, be truly present. When we have a meeting, or when we're doing dishes together, or when we're serving brown bags, or when we're cleaning up afterwards, or when we are with one another in the fellowship hall, or when we're standing talking in the office. Imagine if we're thinking somewhere in the mix of everything else we're thinking, am I being fully present to those that God has called me to be present with? It's not easy. It would really be much easier if we just took attendance and left it at that. And I don't know when they put these 5 things together as United Methodists, if what they had in mind was just showing up with your body. But my guess is that when we show up and are truly present, when we are truly present to God, what is it God has for us today? When we're really present to each other, and when we're really present out in the community, that there's enough power here to change the world in ways that we could not possibly have imagined. I don't know how you are present, but I know that it's something I'm just continuing to work. I will tell you that it's actually easier to me to be present when I'm standing here than it is when I'm sitting out there. You know, there's just something energizing to me about having this conversation together. It's much harder if I don't get to talk. You know? When we think about what it is that we're doing, when we think about what we have signed up for, when we think about what we're building here, that we'll realize that every single one of us is part of this weaving. And the thing that Patty said that really made me have the light bulb go on was, we don't leave the weaving on the loom. What would be the point of leaving this beautiful piece of fabric on the loom? What makes us the people of God is not that we make a beautiful picture here in this sanctuary, but that we take whatever it is that we're building here and we take it out. And I'm excited to see what it will look like. I am so thankful. Thanks be to God. Amen.
Fill our hearts with your peace. You alone, our Lord, are holy. Come and fill our hearts with your peace. Hallelujah. Come and fill our hearts with your peace. You alone, our Lord, are holy. Come and fill our hearts with
come to this particular piece of worship, we're in such a weird time about money, too. Because people are used to spending money on, I'll go online and I'll purchase things, and there's sort of a transaction there that I put money out, and this is what I receive in return. But when we think about what it is that we're doing here when we give, it's not a transaction. And how do we share life together and say, this is a necessity of doing what we're doing here? But to make it about who we are as spiritual beings, how we are present to one another and the world, and how God blesses us so much that no matter how much we have or how little we have, we need to give back. Let us be present to God in these moments of giving.
Make us one, Lord, make us one. Holy Spirit, make us one. Let your love flow so the world will know we are one in you. Make us one, Lord, make us one. Holy Spirit, make us one. Let your love flow so the world will know we are one in Make us one, Lord, make us one. Holy Spirit, make us one. Let your love flow so the world will know we are one in you.
Would you stand with me? I'm sorry.
I am thine, O Lord, I have heard thy voice, and it told thy love to me. But I long to rise in the arms of faith, and be closer drawn to thee. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. Consecrate me now to thy service, Lord, by the power of grace divine. Let my soul look up with a steadfast hope, and my will be lost in thine. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side.
Well, that was just fun. Thank you. I love the little ch-ch-ch-ch-ch. It just reminded me of a third grade Sunday school teacher I had who played the piano like she was playing the drum. So, yes, thank you. That just brought me back to Miss Richards' Sunday school class. Loving God, we give you thanks for gifts given with an open heart. We know that there are moments when it just doesn't seem like there's enough time or enough love or enough anything. And yet in this moment, oh God, we say, it is well, it is enough. And what we have, O God, we give. Thank you. Amen. Please be seated.
At this time, I would like to draw your attention to the insert that is in your bulletin. Ways that we can be present, not only right here in this time and space, but with each other, with our community, with our families. At the top of this, there's a Wednesday prayer group at 2 o'clock. Also on Wednesday this week is the bags. So that will be unloading the truck at 3 and serving the community at 4:30. Also, the Brene Brown class is on Thursday. On the back is opportunities. One of the ones that was left off this week is the Holden prayer service, 5:30 soup supper at the Lutheran Episcopal Church, and then a prayer service starting around 6:15 after that. There are things coming up in March, the Seekers. So please take this home and prayerfully consider how you can be present. Not just in body, but in spirit. How are you available to God, to each other, to our community? Is there anything I'm missing this week? We will be packing the Backpack Buddy bags after church, and if you would join us in the fellowship hall, be present with one another with some goodies and coffee or water. All right. Oh, yes, and then after you grab some coffee, we'll head down the hallway to room 8 and talk about being present and what does it mean as part of being a member of the church. Thank you. All right.
I just want to let everybody know that Seekers is not a closed group that people belong to and you have to be a member. It is just a gathering time where we get together as adults and we eat it. Yeah, and so those of you who are newer to the congregation or who have never come, you're all welcome. It is not defined by age, but we usually make it an all-adult thing just so that we can gather together without being distracted by our children.
All right, thank you. Will you please stand and join in singing?
Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can. Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can.
Hello, hello. There we go. In the fellowship hall, right straight down there. You can even see it from here for some coffee and to have conversation. They're brown bags. Backpack Buddies, just down the hallway if you want to just load some stuff up. Jill will be there to... There we go. I think I ran out of words. Doug says, good. And then after that, we will meet in room 8 to have some conversation. So, beloved, as we go forth from this place, help us to recall together that we are people called to love, to community, to your grace. And for these things, oh God, we give thanks. Go in peace. You can warm my hands up. I need to give this to Janet.
No.
Hand that to Janet for me. Hello. There's my boy. There's my boy. I liked him. Okay.